Welcome to the Coach Doctor podcast, a podcast where we discuss aspects of sports coaching from grassroots to grandstands. I'm your host, James Barkell, and on this podcast, we hear from academics who research coaching. We talk to coaches on the front line from development levels through to professional coaches, and we discuss other elements of successful sporting programs with experts and practitioners from a range of sports science fields, motivational psychology, strength and conditioning, and many other elements required for successful performance. If you'd like to know more about what we do at The Coach Doctor, you can visit our website, thecoachdoctor.com.au, and learn more about our services, or follow me on Instagram at thecoachdr for more regular information. In this episode of the Coach Doctor podcast, I speak with Steven Webster. Steven is a lifelong entrepreneur, technologist, martial artist, and coach, and the CEO and founder of ASENSEI, a technology that uses motion capture and human movement recognition software to power personalised health and fitness experiences. He holds a 4th degree black belt and 2 2nd degree black belts in Ju Jitsu and Karate, and is one of the most successful sports coaches in British university sport. He captained and then coached Edinburgh University Karate Club to 10 consecutive national championships prior to moving to California in 2009. Whilst coaching, Steven has also worked for some of the leading tech industries, including Microsoft and Adobe, before starting ASENSEI in 2014. In a nutshell, I believe ASENSEI has created movement recognition and coaching intelligence technology that is powered by human movement recognition. However, I look forward to Steven's more detailed explanation in just a moment, because I'm sure my explanation doesn't do it any justice. His goal is to blend his deep coaching knowledge with his technological expertise to create connected health and fitness experiences that empower people to achieve their personal best. Steven, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much. Looking forward to this.
That's great. Listen, Steven, could you start off by telling me where you are in the world currently?
Yeah, I'm in Napa Valley in California, as you can tell by my accent, right?
Yes, well, it's the Scottish accent doesn't really match the Californian vibes, but we might get into a bit more of the background of where you're from in a moment. But you started your journey as a martial artist and a coach. Could you tell us about those early experiences and how they shaped your views on coaching?
Yeah, so I, like many of us, I just played a ton of sport growing up as a kid. Lived outdoors during the summer. But the sports or the activities that I was like disproportionately passionate or obsessed with were martial arts. First it was judo, but then very quickly Ju Jitsu and Karate. And even as a kid, I was coaching. It was a privilege to have the instructor. In martial arts, you want to be the one that the instructor always demonstrates on. When they're teaching the class, and so you kind of start there. We call it the stooge. You're the stooge, and you're the one getting thrown around and beat on. And for some reason, that's a position you want to attain. And then I would, assistant coach. As a kid, I was coaching the kids' classes, and but when I went to university, my plan was to join the karate club and compete, and I did. I captained and competed the karate club, but very quickly, I was being asked to teach an extra class. I was coaching as an assistant coach while I was a student. And then when I graduated, the university asked me to take over the club as the main coach. And so, I coached for over a decade at University of Edinburgh. And to be honest, I learned as I was going. I'm sure we'll get into it, but obviously I had my coaching qualifications that you need to, can you put a bandage on and don't hurt children. I learned a lot as I went, and studied with some great instructors, and learned to teach by watching them teach and be taught by them. So I'm sure we'll get into it, but yeah, that's where my passion and background in coaching came from.
Yeah, going into that, you coached, well, you started off by captaining, and then you coached the Edinburgh University Karate Club to I believe, a streak of 10 national championships. What do you think led to that success, and what did you learn from, I guess, that coaching experience?
Yeah, I mean, so the story is when I took the club over, when the university asked me to take the club over, the club was on the brink of collapse, and we hadn't, as a club, competed in tournaments for a good few years. And I took the club over just a few weeks before the national championships, and I told the club we're entering. Even though nobody in the club had been in an event before, it's like we're entering, so we've all got that first time experience under our belts so that we can go back next year and win. And that's what we did. We went, we got pretty beat. I think a couple of the team managed to get bronze medals. But we went back the next year and we won. We swept the whole, to win the championship means to medal the most in men's, women's, kumite, the fighting and kata forms, individual and teams across all categories. And so we did win, which was phenomenal. And so then I had the arrogance of youth to say, like, we're going to do three in a row. We're going to go for the treble. And we did. And so when we did three, obviously I went to 10. And I told the world we're going to win 10 in a row. And regretted it around about year six and seven. It's a hard goal to hit. But we just really built a culture of excellence in the club. I mean, and I didn't just teach sport karate. I also taught a lot of self-defense, which is couldn't be more different to sport karate. Um, but I kind of really built this culture of we're going to learn to play the game and we're going to learn to play the rules and we're going to approach our training very differently. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it, but we were very unorthodox in our approach, and that's that's the entrepreneur emerging. But we were very unorthodox in our approach, and a reference you might like, I kind of referenced it to like Strictly Ballroom. Was it what was the movie where it was the ballroom dancer that was
Yeah,
just
Strictly Ballroom.
it
Yeah,
was a
yeah.
Strictly Ballroom. Yeah, we were kind of the Strictly Ballroom of British karate. People saying that's not karate that they're doing.
Oh, really? So can you give me some examples of what's changed and how you did that?
Yeah, it's funny. It's one of the most important things in martial arts is distancing and timing. I mean, it's a game of distance and timing, right? And 99% of clubs that you'll walk into, karate clubs, you start at extreme distance apart from your partner. You can't reach each other and touch each other. And it's only after you're a black belt do you get into like close quarters or close range combat. Because I was already a black belt in jiu-jitsu and more comfortable at close range when I started karate, when I started teaching, I turned the syllabus on its head and said, day one, you're going to be nose to nose with your partner and you're going to get comfortable at that level, and then we'll work the distance backwards. And that immediately was just an advantage that my team were just very comfortable in that moment that most people have that, cold water shock
Yeah.
moment. And then the other thing I did, and this really kind of mirrors my kind of startup world as well, is uh, everybody loves repertoire. Everybody wants to collect new techniques. I want to learn the spinning kicks and the hook kicks and the backhands and the back fists and I decided that the only way we were going to win a tournament going from zero to the next year was if we only learned one technique. And so the reverse punch, the backhand punch, that is all I allowed my club to throw in sport karate. We didn't, when we were doing other stuff, we would learn everything. But the rule was if you were competing, you were only allowed to score with a reverse punch, which seems kind of boring. But what it allowed me to do was now that I've got the technique out the way, I can really make sure people are doing that technique well. We were able to focus on all the ways you score the technique, your footwork, your timing, your distancing, making sure the referee is always on the side that he'll see the point and not miss the point. And so, again, I'm talking to that unorthodoxy of like, but when you constrain one thing, it opens up a whole other set of things that you can coach instead. And so, every single one of my students and my team, they were tacticians, they were strategists, they understood how to make the point score. And then, as we became more accomplished as a team, we would start to layer in more and more techniques and more repertoire. But the foundations were really, really good. And yeah, I think one of the things I'm most proud about at that is 3 or 4 years later, when you showed up at a karate competition, every other club was doing the same. They'd kind of
Yeah.
realized that, this is the way at beginner level, everybody was doing the same. So, yeah, I think that was the secret to our success was like simplicity, in how we approached, repertoire.
Yeah, that's really interesting because it almost changed the way the sport was, I guess, coached, and then also you're just focusing on getting one aspect of it really, really high quality, rather than trying to do lots and lots of different things at a decent quality. So
Right.
it sort of shows that if you can focus on one thing really, really well, it can lead to a lot of success. You don't need to be a master of everything. So
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah, you mentioned the word entrepreneur before. You worked in or you worked with Adobe, Microsoft, and now you run your own business. And correct me if I say this incorrectly. A Sensei,
Asensei.
A Sensei. Okay, A Sensei.
But people say Asensei as well, but Asensei is
Okay.
how
So
you feel.
how did your time in big tech influence how you began solving problems in coaching and fitness in those sorts of areas as well?
I mean, it's actually the other way around. I would say how I approach, I learned a lot on the mat, on the tatami. I learned a lot, it was a period, I was in my 20s, right? And I'm standing up in front of a class I had a big club. The club was, over 100 people at the start of the year, sometimes closer to 200. So, 3 or 4 times a week, I'm standing in the middle of a sports hall, commanding the attention of like 100 students, assessing their ability, coaching them, bringing the best out of them, turning them into a team, building camaraderie, building a culture around the team. Um, and that really served me well. When I joined Adobe through the acquisition of my first company, I had a small software consultancy that Adobe acquired. But then when I landed in Adobe, those same skills of suddenly I'm leading teams of hundreds of people around the world, and it was the skills I learned on the mat that I was leaning on. Because I mean, if you're working for Adobe or you're working for Microsoft, you're smart. You're technically accomplished. You don't need me teaching you how to code or teaching you engineering. But that kind of like building culture and building a team and building purpose and shared values and shared vision. I'm a big fan of Sir Clive Woodward, the former England rugby coach, and when we had our very first board meeting at Asensei, we gave all the board members a copy of Sir Clive's book called Winning. And he talks a lot about, the lessons that he learned in business and how he applied them to sport and vice versa. And even to this day, concepts like critical non-essentials and performance by the aggregation of marginal gains, all these kind of Sir Cliveisms, we talk about them even to this day a lot as a team and a lot with our customers. And so, yeah, I think sport has influenced my success I've been able to have in my career. And in a way, that's what we're trying to do with the Sensei is like, how can we use sport and fitness as something that if everybody can realize their athletic potential, you give them a glimpse of their broader human potential. And so, I think coaching sport is noble and something that we should try and scale with digital.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that book by Clive Woodward. I read the same book in early in my coaching career and
No way.
learnt a lot from it. And I've highlighted pages and I've got little sticky notes in different pages, and I go back to it quite regularly. And
So we've got a Scotsman that read an English rugby coach's book, and we've got an Australian who got smashed by the English rugby team. That's the
yes,
subject of the book. So yeah, if you and I
yeah.
enjoy the book, it's a good book. It's
It's a great book. Yes, unfortunately, it's from an English rugby coach that beat us in a
yeah,
World Cup final. But
yeah,
no, it was great book, and I think he talks about reading quite a few other books on
yes,
his journey of learning, and I think that also led me to some other books, Good to Great, which are again business
yeah, yeah.
associated books that you can utilize in sport, and vice versa, the sports aspects you can utilize in business. And what was a pivotal moment where you realized that technology could bridge the gaps in traditional coaching methods, or take you from someone in the tech industry into the coaching or training industry again?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I was a nerd as a kid, right? My dad was an electrical engineer. I was the first kid in my town to have a home computer. So I was always surrounded by technology, learning to code. Now it's everybody's learning to code when they're young, but that wasn't normal. I was learning to code when I was young. And so playing sport, even as a kid, I was like, how can I practice and have the technology tell me that I'm getting better? So a huge number of failed experiments. I don't know if any of them even worked in the end, but how can my punch bag tell me how hard I'm hitting it? Or how can I have like a light up on my punch bag and measure my reaction time? Or how can I wire up something? I played a lot of like street hockey and ice hockey as well. I was always shooting pucks in my backyard off a piece of plywood because there's not enough ice outdoors in Scotland. And so I was always just trying to figure out like, can I make things that will, make my practice more fun? Because I'm practicing in my garage by myself or in my backyard by myself, make my practice more fun. So it's kind of been a constant itch I've always scratched. And then as I was coaching at the university, um, I think genuinely had one of the very first karate websites on the internet. I mean, I was at university when the Mosaic browser, the first browser launched. And I mean, I remember a day when I thought I'd read the whole internet. There was no more links I could click on that I hadn't clicked on before search engines, right? Or when Yahoo was really a directory, not a search engine. And so I had a website for my karate club, and even then I was like sharing my coaching and sharing my knowledge in a way my students could download it. Putting videos online when that was not an easy thing to do because you were recording them on tape. But to answer your question, I would fast forward to my last real job from after Adobe. I went to Microsoft. And I think going to Microsoft, I already knew that I wanted to start another company. I just didn't know what it was going to be yet. And I wanted to do something that was kind of in the health space, just from an altruistic perspective. I was like, I want to apply my um, talent, if you like, to something that makes people healthier or fitter with technology. And then, long story short, I kind of had that moment of like, wait a minute, you were a pretty good coach. And can you coach sport and fitness and use that as a gateway to healthcare? Um, and when I was at Microsoft, I got to know the team that invented the Microsoft Kinect. I'm pointing at one that invented the Microsoft Kinect, that camera that plugged into the Xbox. And there were some games on the Xbox for yoga, and like Nike brought a game out. And then I spent some time not working in, but working with the Xbox fitness team. And I was beginning to see two worlds collide. One was machines are beginning to be able to understand human movement. I mean, back then it was like very superficial. Did you move left? Did you move right? It wasn't, the finesse of a sports coach. But machines are starting to understand movement. And then the other thing that was happening at that time at Microsoft, I was deep in the world that we're just kind of emerging into now, which is the world of intelligent agents. So over a decade ago now at Microsoft, my team was very much imagine a future where we have these digital agents that know us and know our context and our data and our preferences and can kind of act on our behalf, either with other agents as brokers, or they can be guides for us with our health, with our education. And I tried to take Microsoft in that direction over a decade ago, and it's really hard to move an organization the size of Microsoft. And so I just had this eureka moment of like, you know what? I think I can coach karate and therefore any other sport just through a machine that recognizes and understands human movement and has this kind of AI coach that coaches me. And so I'll pause for breath there, but that's when I had the moment of like, I gotta quit my job and do this. Like, I gotta build this company. It was a calling for sure.
So that led to ASENSEI. And what exactly is it, and how does it work? Was it specifically initially just for karate, or?
It was never meant for karate. I kind of figured like, you don't start in the market just because it's your favorite. You kind of really want to think about like what's the broader opportunity. But let me back up and tell you what Essentially is. So we've made human movement something a machine can understand. We're kind of like speech recognition for movement. And we really do three things. The first is kind of performance capture or motion capture, and that breaks down to three things itself. So the first thing we recognize in real time, just using a regular camera, the camera that's on your laptop or your smartphone or your TV, or if you've got some connected fitness hardware with a screen on it, just that RGB camera, that cheap $5 camera, we're able to create a 3D model of your skeleton in real time. So we've captured your biomechanics. Now, the problem with that skeleton is the coordinate system, the X, Y, Z positions of all the piece parts of the body. The origin of that coordinate system is your hips. Every other coordinate is relative to where your hips is. So that skeleton, even though we see it on screen and it looks like it's standing on the floor, it's actually just disembodied and floating in space. It doesn't know where it is. So the second thing we've developed is another computer vision model called a spatial model that moves that origin from the hips to the lens of the camera. And so now we know, is that skeleton moved left? Has it moved right? Vertical jump, what's the center of mass? What's the lowest point to the floor? What's the highest point to the ceiling? So now we've got spatial information. And the final thing we've added is another vision model for equipment recognition. So we can recognize that you're holding a Power Block Pro 50 dumbbell and it's racked at 25 pounds. We can see cones on the field. We can see lines on the field. We can see the post on your hockey goal. We can pick out objects and how that person is interacting with them in the room. So that's given us the eyes of a coach. We've now taught the machine to like look at what the coach would look at and see what the coach would see, right? The next part, which was the grand problem that we wondered if we could solve, is movement recognition. With all of that information, can I actually tell that James just did a deadlift, or he's in a warrior two pose at yoga, or he's doing a bird dog in his physical therapy, or et cetera, et cetera? Can we quickly teach a machine to understand postures and movements like a deadlift or a rowing stroke or an entire yoga flow or karate kata? And so we've done that in a way that no one else has, and we have this like super reliable and super robust ability to not just recognize movements, but then kind of understand the quality and the finesse. We think like martial arts instructors. Are you doing that movement at white belt level, or are you doing that movement at a black belt level? Or what do you need to learn next to move from the level you're at to the next level you should be? So we can unpack that later, if you like, the kind of whole idea of pedagogy and coaching syllabus. And then the final part, which is the part that, people are like, what? Is all of this like real-time data that we're capturing and generating on what you're doing and how well you're doing it. Now we have to speak like a coach. Like now we have to have the know-how of a coach, and like, what as a coach would I do in this moment? Now, if you're already, I'm sure you're familiar with the idea of like conscious competence and unconscious competence. If you're consciously competent, all I need to do is cue you. You're like, oh yeah, I forgot. But if you're unconsciously incompetent, cueing you doesn't make any difference whatsoever. I need to teach you. I need to show you. I need to break the movement down and whole coach it to you. It's what we call coaching intelligence, and it's how do we, basically teach the syllabus and intervene with the athlete at the right time in the right way. And this is now going all the way to we're able to create digital clones of a coach's voice and have them in your ear, and it's just like the coach is there. And if you do a squat and you show knee valgus, they'll immediately ask you to remember, press your knees out as if X, and you'll make that correction. And the second you make that correction, you'll hear that coach in your ear say, great fix or great correction or good job. Basically take away all of that technology. You stand in front of a camera and you hear a coach in your ear coaching you any sport, movement, physical therapy of your choice.
First of all, it sounds absolutely amazing that just standing in front of a video camera can do that. When you talked about unconscious coaching and conscious coaching, I think I missed it. Did you say that it can pick up, or it can coach you to the level that you're at? So, like you talked about a white belt karate skill compared to a black belt karate skill.
Can do. So the way we recognize movement is unique. It's proprietary. And we first recognize what we call the lowest common denominator of the movement. Okay, so the lowest common denominator of the movement is if I show you, like, James, today we're going to do a reverse punch. Let me show you a reverse punch. I do it like this. I stand this way. I do X, Y, then Z. Now it's your turn. You do one. That honest, faithful attempt you made to do what I just showed you, you should get recognition for that. It's no offense. Maybe you're awesome at karate from the start, but probably you're making a whole bunch of mistakes. Your proprioception is poor. What you saw, doesn't attach to your body immediately. But if I see that lowest common denominator of the movement, first of all, if I don't see it, I sensei can fix it. So let's say I'm like, I want you to step forward on your left leg, and you actually step forward on your right leg. A sensei would be able to cue you to switch your legs around and get you into position and get you set up correctly. But once you're set up correctly and you're hitting the lowest common denominator of the posture or the movement, we then have this system that we call nuances. And nuances are all the points of performance that a coach might care about. So again, let's stick with a squat because everybody understands squats, right? So the nuances in a squat might be, are you getting to an appropriate depth? Are you exhibiting knee valgus? Is your torso pitching forward? Is there asymmetry on the way down? Do you kind of go down on the right and then go down on the left? Or do you pitch forward as you stand back up? So there's positive nuances. I think of those as finesse. Those are like, oh, sweet. Do you see the way he kind of like covered his head as he threw that punch? That's a positive nuance.
Yep.
And then there's negative nuances. Do you see the way that he pulls that hand back before he throws the punch? He's telegraphing that punch. I'm going from squats to fighting again. Sorry.
That's
Um,
okay.
uh, and so, Essentially is trained to recognize all of those nuances, but we allow, so maybe an important point to make is we're an ingredient technology. So other brands, other equipment manufacturers, other digital fitness apps, they're putting our technology inside their products so that we can provide these capabilities. And so we allow their coaches to decide. We're not the source of truth for what a good squat is worldwide. All we're saying is we can observe all of these nuances and you can tell us what's the order of importance, what's the white belt to black belt. Um, and not only what's the order of importance, what do you do when you see them? Like if you see torso tilt forward on a squat, are you going to cue it every single time? Or would you leave it unless you saw it 3 times in a row? Then you might cue it. Or would you leave it completely? But then the next time you do that exercise, do what we call intention set, which is like last time we did these squats, James, I saw your torso pitching forward. So this time I want you to think about showing me the badge on your chest. So we might use something we saw previously to change the setup instructions the next time we do it. So we call that a coaching strategy, and that's something we allow the coach to do. So in a nutshell, yeah, we don't just recognize movement, we can kind of like grade you and see where you are. And then what's coaching if it's not just like, where are you and what's the one next thing I teach you? If I never see you again, I made you like incrementally better. It's
Yep.
aggregation of marginal gains, right? It's like just next, next, next. And so that's how ASENSEI teaches on behalf of coaches who otherwise aren't there.
Stephen, I've seen on your website just some images of athletes rowing and yoga, and I'd sort of explain it to any listeners, sort of like something from the Matrix, where you've got the arrows and the angles around all the
Yeah,
body,
yeah.
and you've got the AI coach giving them feedback on, the rower. I think it was something to do with pulling their scaps back. I'm trying to get into my head. You talked about the actual aspects of the skills that are being identified. Is that set up manually the by coaches, or is that just, does the system automatically recognize that and start to
No, it's a
identify
good
that?
question. It's a good question. So, I mean, we provide sensible defaults, right? I mean, a squat is a squat is a squat, and most people will agree that knee valgus is egregious and you want to fix it. And so we certainly have, I mean, we have exercise scientists in our team, and we set sensible defaults. However, almost, especially when in fitness, if some of our customers are using our technology and it's like, we'll count your reps and we'll give you form feedback and we'll set challenges for you, rep targets or AMRAPs. And, there the brand is less likely to care so much about, the finesse of coaching. But when you start getting into physical therapy or you start getting into kind of sports performance, there are strong points of view on how you should coach. And yeah, I mean, karate is like religious debate on everything from should your heel be on the ground or not when you punch, and clearly it shouldn't be, um, is my opinion. And so we allow coaches in the companies that we work with to, like I said, set the order of importance of nuances. What's the syllabus they want to teach to? Progressions and regressions. Like if you consistently see somebody doing a movement incorrectly, when would you regress and what would you regress to? Or when would you progress and what would you progress to? All the way down to what's the coaching language you want to use. Like, everybody has a different point of view on what the right cues are to use and how often to use them. And so we give all of that control to the coaching team so that if you're using two products powered by a Sensei, you really shouldn't be seeing or hearing us. We're just in there powering the expression of the coach that you're training with on that platform.
A lot of fitness startups and a lot of fitness tech just sort of gives you, information, and you go away and do what you can with it. But Sensei seems to have a real focus on pedagogy and skill acquisition. How does it actually teach? How does that actually
Yeah.
work in that sense?
Yeah, let's use rowing as an example because we cut our teeth on rowing for a good while, indoor rowing. I remember sitting down with a rower and asking the very naive question, how important is technique and form in rowing? And he just looked at me and used a line which I still use to this day, that good form is free speed. And that's really, form is everything in rowing, and there's not much between your form and your numbers. It's not like, soccer or rugby where there's a team and there's weather and there's, tactics. It's, are you exhibiting good form? So let's use rowing as an example. A sensei understands movement as posture in time, right? And so if you can picture yourself on a Concept 2 rowing machine or an indoor rowing machine, the first position that you would be coached into is the catch. So you're at the front of the rowing machine, your shins are vertical, your back's upright, you're leaning slightly forward, your arms are outstretched at the handle, your knees aren't splayed out. So I would coach you into that position if I was teaching you to row. And I'm not a rowing coach, I just play one on podcasts. But I would coach you into that position and be like, James, that's the catch. Here's a couple of points of, I wouldn't teach you everything. I'd teach you a lowest common denominator and then something. But I would get you into that position. So a sensei can guide you into that position, literally step by step, say, slide up to the front until your shins are vertical. And then when the camera sees that your shins are vertical, it'll move on to the next step. Good. Now sit up tall. Good. Now stretch your arms out and reach for the handle. And if you do it with your arms bent, it'll correct you. And if you do it with your arms straight, it'll say good. And so we can coach you into that movement. We then might do the same at the back of the rowing stroke. We'll say, like, now this is the finish position. Your legs are flat, your back's at this angle, elbows down. And so that's how a sensei can coach you into postures. But then the next thing is, and this is why I like the rowing stroke as an example, the sequence of moving from one posture to the kinematic sequence of moving from the catch to the finish. It's obvious if you're sport minded, it's big muscle to small muscle. It's legs first, swing, it's a triple extension. Legs flat, swing the body, pull the arms. Well, we can coach you through. That's how I would coach you, right? Or I might even have a drill where we roll legs only. We don't do the body swing and the arms. We just practice pushing with the legs and sliding to the front and pushing with the leg. And then we might do legs and body, but no arms. And then we'll add legs, body, arms. Now I've taught you the drive sequence. And then there's one more, the recovery, which, I'm not going to teach your listeners how to row here. But you can see how I can coach you into a position, I can coach you into another position, and then I can coach the coordination between positions. And we're doing that with whole part, whole coaching, where we'll show you the whole thing, we'll break it down into parts, we'll put the parts together again, and then we'll take the training wheels off. I'll give you a video that you can drop in the show notes that will see somebody getting coached a squat to press in this manner. So we can teach any exercise. So for beginners that are new to an at-home fitness product that have perhaps never strength trained before, we can teach them the repertoire that they need. And then also, and this is the martial arts instructor, it was such a reward when an instructor would come up to you and say, you're doing really well. Now it's time to teach you a spinning hook kick, or now it's time to stop kicking at the body. Let's teach you how to kick to the head. So that reward of like unlocking another exercise, that's something we can do digitally as well. When we observe, basically when you start getting rid of the negative nuances and displaying the positive nuances, we can progress you to a new exercise, but teach it to you first. So yeah, really, it feels like there's a coach in the room with you.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely amazing. If someone wants to use it, is it something that people can buy?
No, we don't sell directly to consumer. Like our customers are companies in the sport, the fitness, the healthcare space, right? So you might I almost named a customer I shouldn't there, but you might go and be getting physical therapy for shoulder rehab, and the company that's providing that digital at-home physical therapy for you is using our technology to track your range of motion and coach you through the exercise. Or you might be working out on a fitness product at home, and our technology is inside that fitness product. If you look at the ASENSEI website, asensei.ai or asensei.com, you'll see case studies there, and it's customers like We just announced Tonal, the strength training machine. So, Tonal just announced that they're using us for 3D motion analysis. We've got Center, the company that Chris Hemsworth started, the fitness company, and a number of other, equipment manufacturers like Vertimax and PowerBlock, and you'll see on the website. So if you wanted to experience a sensei, you would purchase or download one of our customers' products, and that's how you would experience it.
Okay, so you're the brain behind some other
Yeah, we're the
companies.
ingredient. We call ourselves an ingredient technology. The analogy I like to use is probably every TV in your house or soundbar or headphones has got Dolby Atmos in it, and Dolby is the sound provider. We're like Dolby, but for human movement. We're the ingredient technology.
Yeah. The next question I was going to ask is, and you mentioned sports like rugby and soccer or football. For sports like rowing and golf and yoga and karate, for example, they tend to have a lot of closed skill aspects to them where things like weather or an opponent isn't going to be interacting with a skill. But a sport like rugby, where each time you go into a tackle, or in football, every time you receive the ball and pass the ball, it's going to be slightly different. There's going to be a bit of variation. Can it work in sports like that, or is it more for perfecting the closed skill aspects of sports?
The way I think of it today is we add the most value in practice, not scrimmage, right?
Yep.
Scrimmage is where you're starting to practice tactics and strategy and interplay and agility. When I say agility, I mean like mental agility, like what just happened and how are we going to react? How am I going to position myself? What you're doing off the ball is as important as what you're doing on the ball. You're not really just tracking the person on the ball, right? It's like, did he make that run into that space? Did he see that person make that run into space? So I think that like there's a lot of other analytics there. That's where you get into the worlds of a catapult and GPS tracking, and there's other technologies that I think are providing more useful information to the coaches and the players. I think our strength is much more in unsupervised practice, where you're practicing unsupervised, but you want to have that closed loop feedback, or maybe even just like a simple example is even just like the laboriousness of logging sets and reps, right? You are a rugby player, you are a soccer player. You're at University of Michigan, and you're only allowed a certain number of hours with your coach, and so your time in the strength room, that's you yourself. You might have an iPad that you log into that tells you what your workout routine is, but who's logging the sets? Who's logging the reps? Who's tracking what weight that you used? Who's spotting fatigue? Who's recognizing, do you have any reps in reserve? Should I push you to do one more? Should I push you to do two more? So even for a team sport, like there's a place for us in the strength room, there's a place for us in return to play, there's a place for us in rehab. And so that's kind of how I think about sport. I think less about can I analyze the game in real time. Although I will say, and I can imagine us being in this world in the future. Companies like Hawkeye are doing an increasingly good job of not just picking out the players on the field, but starting to pull out their skeletons. And so now, if you've got that skeleton of that player, that can feed perfectly into a sensei, and you might run some analytics there, like what were they doing? A good example might be we've done a little bit of work in like tennis and pickleball and paddle, where it's more. I want to identify analytics like how many times was a serve returned with a forehand. And so you need a technology like us to recognize there was a serve, recognize there was a forehand, and that those two events were, between each other. So I can imagine us being in more of these sporting applications in the future, but right now we're really just focused on strength and mobility is huge for us right now. It's just like a big category, and it's very fashionable right now. I think people are really cottoning on to the understanding that strength training is potentially more beneficial for you than cardio training. I mean, it's not an either or, but more people are, what's the word I'm looking for? Less intimidated by the idea of strength training. So that's a huge category for us. And then increasingly, we're doing a lot of work in healthcare and physical therapy and prehab and rehab
Yeah.
applications as well.
Yeah, I can imagine in that medical, in the therapy, prehab, rehab area, it would be invaluable. One thing you just mentioned before is you talked about an athlete in a strength program and having feedback in terms of one more rep or, trying to motivate them. Is it something a sensei can also establish or coach? Apologies for seeming so daft, but
Go
how can it
ahead.
possibly pick up if I've got one more rep in me or not?
Well, so there's a great, so this is not us. I'll point you to, I'll try and find it and you can put it in the show notes. Our customer Tonal, they just published a really interesting, I think that's why I threw that example out there. They just published a really interesting paper about using data that they already have off the machine, the cable, to accurately predict reps in reserve. So I'll point you at that paper for people that really care about that stuff. But that's where this kind of world of AI and sports science is starting to collide. And as I'm sure you know, for strength training, when you start getting specific about your goals, like hypertrophy versus weight loss, the number of target reps and how within that target you are becomes an indicator of not just how many reps you should be doing, but are you moving too much load or not enough load? So it's really interesting. The kind of things that we see, like we see fatigue. I mean, what is fatigue? It's not like huffing and puffing. Fatigue is the collapse of form. You start to see, oh, they're getting tired, they're dropping their hands, or they're getting tired. They were doing 3 seconds down and 1 second up, and now it's like 2 seconds down and 10 seconds up. And so, like that movement and posture and timing and breakdown of form, and these are all indicators of things like fatigue, and that allows us to come in with encouragement. Just two more, one more, and we did some really interesting consumer insights studies for some of our customers, and that's probably one of the most common and most satisfying pieces of feedback. Is I feel like I pushed myself harder than I usually would because I felt accountable and I felt encouraged. And so, we're definitely doing a good job replicating that feeling of like, as soon as you know it's getting recorded for posterity, you wanna do your best, right?
So, just another question regarding technique and the coaching or the coaching aspect of the technology in sports. Look, I might go back to karate as an example. When you're performing a type of punch in karate and you have different body sizes, body shapes, different biomechanics, if I perform a technique, the same technique as you, and I perform it differently than you because of our body shape and the way I've potentially learnt the skill, but I get good results from it. Does the equipment potentially try to change my technique if, given that I'm performing it in a way that it's proving successful for me, but it's not, I guess, an orthodox type of movement compared to what you might do or the majority of people who are performing that movement might do. Would it try and improve my technique or change my technique, or would it say, look, this is the technique that works for you, so we're just going to try and, you know,
That would depend because we're an ingredient technology and we're providing the information. That would depend on our end customer's decision on how they wanted to treat that case. But what I will say is, going back to the idea of like the lowest common denominator of a movement and the nuances of a movement, that accommodates that two athletes. And I like the Nike definition of athlete. If you have a body, you're an athlete. So two athletes might perform the same movement differently. Again, I'll use a squat as an example. Like, a power lifter is going to have much greater depth and flexibility at the bottom of a squat than someone who's doing rehab after, heart surgery. And so you're not trying to hold them to the same standard, but you are trying to assess, again, did they faithfully attempt to do the thing? Uh, and the nuances tell us how well they did it or to what quality they did it. And so that would allow you to For instance, say, um, I'll go to, karate is a good example. When you're throwing a reverse punch, so you're kind of reaching with your backhand, throwing a reverse punch. Most styles of karate will encourage you to have your heel on the ground at the end point of the punch. Um, the way I teach, you're on the ball of your foot. Like, why would you waste that power? Why would you not get the rotation? Why would you not get the drive? Um, you're now going to have like a million YouTube comments telling me I'm wrong, but I'm not. I might choose with a nuance to flag whether the foot was on the floor or whether the heel was off the ground. And it would be up to the platform provider to decide, are we a Shotokan karate app that's going to make sure that heel is pinned to the floor? Or are we a Shitoru karate app and we're going to make sure you're on the ball of the foot? And we provide the data and we allow the coach to determine what to do with it.
Great. So there is that ability for people who are using that technology to go in and indicate what it is exactly that they want to see. And
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
I guess being someone who's not in the tech industry, I'm constantly coming to terms with the ability of this equipment, and it just seems
I know.
it just seems amazing. And I'm hoping that it doesn't mean that the coach as a person is slowly pushed to the side for
I'll tell you a funny story. When I first started the company, um, and I was trying to figure out like we wanted to pick a sport that wasn't our own sport because when you pick your own sport, you feel like you bring a lot of bias to how it should be coached, and so I needed to have that beginner's mind again. I'd done a lot of coaching and I hadn't been coached for a while, so I picked some sports. I was taking Pilates classes, I was taking yoga classes, I was rowing because I wanted to be coached. And then I ran some. We zeroed in on rowing as like this is a good place for us to start because not only is it a closed loop movement and the form is important, but there's a number on the screen in front of you that tells you how well you're doing it. So like we're not just aesthetically improving your form, we're trying to get more watts per stroke and drop your 2K time from 8 minutes to sub 7. And so, anyway, so I run this rowing workshop at Serra High School in California. That's Tom Brady's old high school. And so I get introduced to the Serra Rowing Club, and it's all these kind of, I guess, like 14-year-old kids. And one kid refused to participate because he didn't want to be anything to do with robots taking over the world, and he got a pass and an exemption from the workshop. Um, and I tell that story, and I remember that story like 12 years on because it was like at Adobe, I became very involved in design and design thinking, and as a design thinker, something that's really important is ethnography and anthropology. It's like just observing human behavior. And it stuck with me. It's like, wait a minute, I never thought about it. I'm such an optimist about technology. I generally approach life as technology just unlocks our potential. It doesn't replace it. So I was kind of holding that bias. And then hearing that kid say that, I'm like, shoot, there's people who are going to be threatened by this. And the people who are going to be threatened are the people I care about most. It's the coaches. They're going to feel like they're being replaced. So that one kid in Sarah High School who's probably like, 25 now. I have him to thank for immediately realizing that we need to make sure coaches understand that we're celebrating them, we're not replacing them, and we're allowing them to do something at digital scale the way so many of the rest of us were already in the industries we were in. Like the internet allowed us to reach more people and teach more people. Um, and the last thing I'll add is, many of our use cases, we call them the super coach, where, we've got one customer who has, I'm going to say like 30 franchises around the US, where you can go in and essentially work with a PT, but they're stretching you, it's assisted stretching, and they're kind of like looking at your balance and mobility and stability and kind of stretching you. And day one, you walk into that studio, you stand in front of a tablet. The coach takes you through an active movement prep, but the tablet powered by ASENSEI is watching that movement prep and identifying, measuring end range of motion, measuring balance, measuring stability, looking at strength. But instead of us giving that information to the customer, we give that information to the coach. And so the coach then looks at the tablet and they have a series of recommendations of, we saw that Stephen has poor shoulder mobility. You should probably add in these exercises and do this. And so we're making the coach better. Another example of a super coach, like imagine you're in a studio teaching rowing classes and it's dark and the lights are going and there's 50 people rowing, but then all of a sudden there's a notification on your Apple Watch saying James on erg number 57 is pulling with his arms and not pushing with his legs. And now the coach knows to walk up and like correct that person's technique with the right correction. So we've made the coach look better rather than replace them with technology. So no, we're not here in the business of putting coaches out of business.
No, that sounds that's a really good positive answer. And funnily enough, my last interview was around coach mental health and coach well-being, and one of the things that was brought up was the fact that coaches are just constantly working ridiculous hours
Right.
to try and meet the needs of their athletes. And I mean, what you're essentially doing is you're potentially helping coaches deliver more and more. Outside. So basically, you're giving them more opportunities to coach without
Right.
adding to their workload.
I'll
So
give you another good example. Actually, one of our customers is we call their customer the industrial athlete. So 80% of the global workforce is deskless and in a physically demanding job. It's the factory floor worker, it's the FedEx driver. Okay. And so a lot of their customers, there's like one athletic trainer and maybe 500 employees. Like you can't movement screen 500 employees in a year. You can't get around them in a year. But now, with our technology integrated into their product on hire, people go through this movement assessment and it allows you to kind of stratify your population and identify not who's next, but who's most at risk. How do we put them in a job that they're physically capable of doing? How do we give them preemptive mobility that's going to keep them injury free? And how do we identify the at-risk population and make sure the PT is working with them and not working with like the 9 out of 10 people that don't need the PT? And so you can only imagine, it's taking the load off the PT or the athletic trainer, and it's making sure that you're optimizing the health of the workforce by focusing on the most at-risk population. So yeah, I'm an optimist about the opportunities for these kinds of technologies.
now you've said that Sensei is about democratizing coaching. What does that mean in the sense of what you're trying to do?
Well, one of the great things about coaching at Edinburgh University was I could call any martial arts instructor in the world and invite them to Edinburgh for a weekend. And if I promised them a place to sleep, a meal, probably a whiskey tour, I could get them on the mat for a weekend teaching and I could learn with them. And I might, arrange a few other seminars for them at other clubs and I would follow them around. And so in my martial arts career, I really got to work with the best instructors in the world. It's like I want to work with that person on this and learn this from that person just by hosting them. And so I think that's where the idea came from really is like, what if everybody had that? Not everybody's at Edinburgh University and can have those coaches flying in. And so that's really the opportunity we see is like we've created this platform that allows, anyone that coaches a particular modality to do it in a much more effective way than a book or a video. It's like, we can literally put their voice in your ear and, clone their knowledge, if you like. That sounds a little sci-fi, but we can take their knowledge and expertise and how they would teach and capture it in a way so that a sensei is essentially animating them when they're not there. And so that's what I mean by democratizing access to world-class coaching. It's like if I want to, I grew up as a kid. I wish Bruce Lee could have coached me martial arts. I wish Wayne Gretzky could have coached me my slap shot. And that's if we succeed at scale, that's what we'll have unlocked.
Yeah, great. So does that mean you need to get the input from, high coaches around the world? So, for example, I'm in Australia and I'm wanting to learn karate. Can I just get you as my coach?
Well, again, our part in the mission is to make sure that as many digital fitness or sport or healthcare products understand what's possible with the Sensei and integrate us into their products. And so that they take the coaches on their platform and deliver this kind of experience. So, we're not doing the last mile, if you like. We're not going all the way to the coach, but I can assure you the customers that we're pitching and selling to are customers who have some of the best coaches in the world on their platforms. And we're like, your platform needs to be powered by us so that that coach isn't just the sage on the stage, the person on the video screen, just look at me and follow along. Let's turn them into an intelligent, interactive version of them, digital version of themselves. And so that's our part in the mission is to help as many companies integrate our technology as possible.
Okay, so if I decided that I wanted to design a rugby goal kicking app and I wanted to integrate a Sensei's technology into that, and then I went to, guys like Johnny Wilkinson and Dan Carter and Gavin Hastings and all these
Yeah.
great. I'd had to throw in a
Yeah,
Scotsman for you.
yeah.
Um,
So,
um, I could go to some of these people and get them to give their thoughts and then from that, could I potentially sell my app saying, well, learn from Johnny Wilkinson and learn from
yeah, I
these goal
mean,
kickers and then the using your phone to on setting your phone on the ground, I go and do a goal kick and then I've got Johnny Wilkinson saying,
hold
get
your hands
your
together.
yeah, hold your hands together or put your put your
Yeah.
left foot closer to the ball before you contact
Yeah.
those sorts of things. Is that the sort of capabilities that
Yeah, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. If you decided that you wanted to build that app, and if you had the ability to convince those guys to come onto your platform, that is exactly how you would use our technology. And well, we've got customers where like you know the coach, you know the athlete, and we can clone their voice and put them in your ear. And so yeah, that's the world we live in. And today we were very focused on working with the big brands that already have, distribution and reach. But there will be a point in the future, and not in the distant future, where we'll make it even easier for that individual application developer to, someone that can just build their own app and stick it on the App Store. At some point, it'll be much easier for them to just download a Sensei and integrate it into their product as well. But today, we're not really focused on the individual developer. We're focused more on the bigger organizations that have, hundreds and thousands of customers because we
yeah.
want to we want to impact as many people as possible with this technology.
Yeah, amazing. So I want to move into that now, your partnerships and where you're impacting. What are some of the big fitness companies that you've worked with? Can you give us some examples of some of those companies and potentially how they're using a Sensei in their technology?
Yeah, I'll probably be a little light on the how because they don't want me talking about
Yeah,
what they're developing or bringing to market necessarily. But yeah, so let's start in the fitness space. Some of the bigger brands that we can talk about that your listeners will have heard about. I mentioned Tonal earlier. We just announced in the last week. We just announced that Tonal are working with us. So that's a piece of strength training equipment. They kind of created this digital strength category where they're using electromagnetic resistance in the cable. You can pull 250 pounds and, just phenomenal piece of equipment. And, we can't say much more than that. But, we're working with those guys. Center, Chris Hemsworth's company, or it was Chris Hemsworth's company. Very typical of the kind of customer that we work with. It's a workout app. There's a bunch of that's a great example. There's Chrissy's trainers are on the app,
yeah,
and you can kind of work out with those guys. So again, can't say too much about what Center have done with us, but if you've been listening, you'll have some idea. And then other like new entrant connected fitness companies. People know there's lots of companies who are the Peloton of. So one of our customers, Alter, have a fitness mirror, and you're standing in front of a mirror and seeing yourself and a reflection of this, like the instructors in the mirror with you. They use us for, their customer is typically more of a, someone that might be on a weight loss journey, someone that doesn't exercise as much, but they understand the importance of strength training. And so we're tracking their reps and we're giving them targets to hit and we're giving them form feedback on the mirror. Really cool product. There's a company called Bout. They call themselves the boxing bag with a brain. So they have a camera mounted on top of the boxing bag. They have sensors in the bag that are tracking things like impact and strike zones. But with the Sensei, they can also, was it a hook? Was it a jab? Was it an uppercut? Was it a knee? Was it an elbow? And they're actually a brick and mortar concept as well as an at-home concept. So they're launching, they're franchising and opening studios in Europe and just announced in the US, where there's like, 12, 20 people in a room all hitting these bags. And it's a very gamified fitness experience, leaderboards and scoreboards. So that's kind of on the fitness side. Um, I mentioned, industrial health, and so we've got customers like Amp Health, where it's much more about kind of worker safety and movement screening and return to work protocols for rehabilitation. We're increasingly, I'm not going to mention so many company names yet, but by the time the show is out, they'll be out there. But in healthcare, so MSK, musculoskeletal injury, so one of the large US MSK virtual physical therapy providers is recently powered and recently launched with ASENSEI. So as you're doing your physical therapy, we're kind of like watching and tracking, and you know that's good for the consumer. It's like I want to make sure I'm doing this correctly, that I'm getting recognition for doing it, but it's also good for the PT and it's good for the insurer. Like, is there adherence? Are people doing the PT that they're given and are they doing it correctly? Um, Other healthcare customers, we have one company called Neurophoenix, who are a neurological rehab company. So it's rehab protocols for stroke patients to recover motor control. So we're really proud of that one. Their patients are going to be powered by ASENSEI, and I think tomorrow we're announcing a company that's in the world of osteoporosis. 1 in 3 women over the age of 50 will suffer a fracture due to bone density, and so they have both rehab but also prehab programs that have been shown to improve bone density. It's kind of strength and yoga type protocols, and they're working with us, and so that's kind of the whole healthcare category. And then we've got equipment providers, legacy equipment, power block. We can track, what weight you're using. And so anybody that's integrating power blocks into their product, we can feasibly track the weight. And if you're familiar with Vertimax, they're quite popular in the US where jump sports are super popular, right? But Vertimax is a kind of cable platform to provide resistance during vertical jumping. And with a Sensei, now a high school kid with a phone can be coached to do a countermeasure jump correctly, and we can measure their vertical, their center of mass, or their highest point or their lowest point. So, yeah, it's a good smattering of customers there.
You really look like holistically you cover the whole range of things from healthcare, rehab, prehab, all the way through to, elite level athletes and people in between who are looking to become healthy and lose weight and those sorts of things. When you mentioned a couple of those companies or a couple of the examples, maybe think of that period during COVID when a lot of those things came out because people were isolating at home and performing their own workouts in front of mirrors and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
was that like a big period for you guys in growth or?
Uh, Not so much in growth, but it was a burn bridges moment for sure, or burn the boats moment, sorry, for sure. And what I mean by that is we always intended to be this B2B company, business to business. It was always our intention that we would be a software development kit that others would use to code in our capabilities into their applications. Um, but I mean, even today, you're sitting on this interview and you're like, I didn't even know this was possible. And so that was kind of our cold start problem, right? Like in this classic entrepreneur, you see the future before everybody else, and then you have this panic that now that you've seen it, everyone else is going to see it as well, right? So we had to show the world what the future looked like, and that's why we picked indoor rowing as a sport that we could start to do two things. One, be really tight with the consumer and really get a deep understanding of what they wanted and what they didn't want. And even though we focused on indoor rowing, we were teaching rowing technique, we were giving them strength training programs, mobility programs, movement assessments. It's like, what's the ecosystem of experiences we can deliver that rowers will eat up and pay money for? Um, and so when COVID happened, we weren't quite ready. We thought we had another step to go, probably another 12, 18 months of customer discovery and showing people what the future looked like. Um, and then I remember I go back to it often. I wrote a strategy memo for the board when COVID happened, and it was basically the time is now. Like we have to go now. People are going to work out at home. Um, PT is going to be shut down, and people are going to have to do that at home. And this is going to be one of those shifts that we don't come back from. Once people have tasted the convenience of virtual PT or tasted the convenience of being able to be coached and worked out at home. I I was never of the opinion that no one will go back to the gym again, but it will become an and, not an or, and it will be both. And so, yeah, 2020, we were like, let's go for it. It was definitely and we just intensely pivoted's the wrong word, but leaned into like now all we're doing is building an SDK for other people to use, and we're going to go out and sell that. And so it was an intense time.
Awesome, awesome. So what's next for Sensei? Are you expanding into new sports, into other areas of rehab, education, or any other fields?
So I say this with a degree of humility. I think the connected fitness market is ours to lose at this point. We're in the consideration set or the only consideration for connected fitness companies or digital fitness companies that you would be insane to try and build this stuff yourself at this point when you can buy it. You don't build a car and create your own speech recognition team so you can turn the wipers on the dashboard. So connected fitness, we're going to really focus on just making sure we're serving that category and serving that category well. Connected healthcare, so all the kind of healthcare examples. It's a huge focus for us this year. Is and if you follow the healthcare market closely, there's been a couple of like really successful big POs, Omada Health and Hinge Health, and then there's like very well capitalized Sword Health, and they've all shown the industry that at home virtual physical therapy with computer vision is a must have. And so now the rest of the category is like, well, how do we catch up with the companies that have IPO'd and funded? And so we feel that that's a huge opportunity for us. And then, topic for another podcast probably, but I have a strong point of view that the lessons learned in digital fitness should be applied to digital healthcare. Like my kind of my tagline right now is digital health should not be sterile. It shouldn't be this like clinical environment. Everything we've learned in fitness to acquire and engage and excite and educate and retain people's attention will allow us to kind of get more people through their PT, make them adhere, shorten their recovery times, reduce their cost of care. So healthcare is a huge market for us. And then also brick and mortar, like increasingly, if you're paying 200 bucks, 300 bucks for your gym and the equipment in your gym is not as good as the equipment in your garage, are you going to go to the gym? And so consumer expectations are starting to change for what kind of experiences they want to have in their studios or their boutiques. And why do I have a tonal on my wall in my garage, but I go to my PT and I'm paying, $2,000 a month on my insurance. I wish I was paying only $2,000 a month, but I'm paying $2,000 a month on my insurance, and the PT is using rubber bands and Swiss balls. Yeah, I've got this, impeccably fine-tuned strength training machine on my wall at home. So we see brick and mortar, but I'll leave you with what's next for Ascensi from a platform perspective. The big buzzword right now is generative AI. We're using things like ChatGPT, and we can converse. And so we've been doing a lot of work over the last 12 months, so that we're not just having the coach speak at you, but you can speak with the coach. And so you'll be able to converse with coach. So it'll be, I'll use your Johnny Wilkinson example. Johnny is not a customer, but he's welcome to reach out. But you might be practicing your drop kicks with Johnny Wilkinson, and now you can say things that you would have said to your coach. It's like, hey Johnny, am I doing this right? Or could you explain that to me again? Or when I do this, it feels like that. Could you watch me? And so that ability to converse, and then have Johnny Wilkinson reply. But you also want to solve the problem of like Johnny Wilkinson's not going to start teaching you his risotto recipe, right? You don't you don't want to and you want to keep we in AI we talk about guardrails. You want to keep the AI within some guardrails and only converse on topics it's intelligent about and not start hallucinating is literally the word that we use in AI. It doesn't start hallucinating. And so, yeah, I mean, if you take this unique, rich, real-time context that Sensi has about human movement, if you take our ability to clone digital voices through partners and deliver digital clones of those voices, and now we can allow you to converse back and forth with them. That future I wanted of Wayne Gretzky teaching me to slap shot or Bruce Lee standing in my garage coaching me. Um, this year we put the final pieces in place that allow anybody to deliver that, and I am like beyond excited about that.
It sounds amazing. I was going to ask the question: has it got the ability to as the athlete or as the person being coached to talk back to to get feedback? Can I get specific feedback on my elbow position or whatever it might be? And that you've just answered that question. So that sounds
Yeah,
like an amazing sort of step.
yeah, yeah.
And just before we finish, what do you hope a sensei's legacy will be within the fitness, sport, and tech industries?
In the same way that you walk into a store and you buy a TV and it's Dolby Atmos badge on the box, and you don't know anything about 7.1 channel surround sound or HDMI ARC, or like you have no idea about that stuff. But faced with a buying decision where there's one TV with Dolby Atmos and there's one without, you buy the Dolby one every single time because that brand, that mark stands for something. Like you know that you're going to have the best sounding audio on the planet if you have Dolby in your product, and that influences your purchase decision of your TV. It might even influence your purchase decision of your car, and
Yeah.
the speakers or what you want in your car. So yeah, that's the bar I've set for us at ASENSEI, is that faced with a buying decision of, do I want to buy this strength training machine or do I want to buy tonal? I'm buying tonal, not because tonal's amazing, which it is, because it's, I heard that they work with ASENSEI, it's got ASENSEI in it. And then when you're choosing a physical therapist to recover your ACL surgery that you've just had, and you see that this physical therapist is powered by ASENSEI, like I'm going to pick that one. So that's our aspiration for the company, is that people understand deliver the best imaginable experience when it comes to learning physical movement and reaching your outcome, whether that's a sub 6 rowing time or it's a strong knee after a rehab, after a surgery.
Awesome. So, Stephen, just before we go, if listeners want to find out more about you or a sensei, where can they go? For example, websites, social media.
Yeah, so website, asensei.ai. I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes, so I won't have to spell it for everyone. But yeah, certainly our website is a good place to reach out to us. We're quite prolific on LinkedIn, as a B2B company, and in this incestuous little industry, we're all pretty active on LinkedIn. So that's the best place to find me. I'm not hard to find there. And we share a lot on LinkedIn. We do a lot of like, this is what we're working on. This is what customer we've won. So that's a great spot. And we also have a newsletter. Like if you're in the industry and you want to keep up to date with what we're doing, our newsletter is called ASENSEI Inside. So asensei.com/inside. And you can go and read past issues and sign up for the newsletter there as well. So I'd encourage people to think about doing that too.
Awesome. Stephen, thank you so much for your time today. It's been absolutely mind-blowing talking to you and finding out some of the technologies that are available through yourself and a sensei. So thank you so much, mate.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Here are my major takeaways from this conversation with Stephen. Firstly, as someone who is a bit wary of AI technology, I do fear that computers could eventually take over many humanistic roles, and in coaching, that is no different. But given how stretched coaches can be, this software acts more as a coaching assistant, putting more time back into the coach's day for planning, managing, and also for downtime, a win-win for all coaches. Something that absolutely astonished me was Stephen's explanation of real-time motion captured feedback, where our sensei uses motion capture to track an athlete's movements in real time. It gives instant objective feedback on technique, which helps coaches correct form without needing to watch every rep, freeing them up to focus on higher level cues and group management. Another aspect of this technology that amazes me is its ability to learn by collecting detailed performance data over time, such as range of motion, tempo, and consistency. Coaches can use this data to monitor progress, identify trends, and personalise programs for each athlete without needing to film, time, or record everything manually. And finally, our sensei bridges the gap between face-to-face and remote coaching. Coaches can assign training sessions, review movement data, and give feedback without being physically present, making it ideal for hybrid coaching models or supporting athletes who train independently. It is amazing how fast technology is moving, and our sensei tends to be at the forefront for improving both the quality and efficiency of personalised coaching. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like it, write a review, and share it with friends and colleagues. And until next time, keep learning.